Welcome to Psychologist Talks. Today's going to be a short on creativity and its relationship with the internet. How has the internet essentially shaped how we encounter our creativity and creation? I'm going to go down memory lane first and compare generations. I think this is important because technology has just expanded exponentially over the last 20 years, and so people's encountering of it varies greatly. And then we'll kind of apply it to the present day. What's the felt sense in the present day, and what do we need to do with that? Well, going back down memory lane, I think there's kind of like a bridge generation, and I would argue, and I fall into this. Anybody from like the late 70s to early 90s has a really interesting relationship with the internet and technology. And that's because during a critical stage of identity development, usually kind of age 10 through mid late 20s, we experience both what it's like to not have the internet and to have the internet. And I think that's such an interesting experience because the generation before was more fully formed as an adult before they had to experience the internet. And the younger generation has known nothing but this sort of expansive, ever proliferating internet and social media. And so we know what it's like to bridge both. And so I'll share my experience first growing up when it comes to creativity and creation. On the plus side, I wasn't constantly being inundated by people's creative output. We're always socially comparing ourselves to other people, but I just had my little circle, right? I mean, there were a few areas of difference, like music. You can always buy music, or film production. There were obviously a lot of units of social comparison, but when it comes just like to the everyday talents that we all have, you have this smaller network that doesn't feel so daunting. It doesn't feel as it didn't feel as pressured to me. Now, I still had depression and anxiety growing up independent of the internet, which apparently is an impressive thing. Pretty pervasive depression too. So I wasn't doing too well with my social comparison. I didn't think I had much to offer, but by and large, I think there was more latitude to express oneself and be able to dabble and experiment without comparing yourself to 100 different people. On the negative side, though, there were less outlets. There were just less opportunities to put yourself out there. And so you were very dependent upon the people around you to guide you. And sometimes people would just be like, that's garbage. I don't like it. Whereas someone 300 miles away might have loved it, and there was no way to encounter that. So again, there was a little bit of a blessing and a curse in this time. So if we fast forward to the present day, you can probably guess the pros and the cons are basically flipped. Technology has provided amazing access. I mean, this podcast is a testament to that. I can have a full-time job in my spare time, after work, on weekends, whatever it might be. I can quickly shoot an episode, low cost, post it, be done, and reach people anywhere in the globe who might be partaking in my content. That is freaking cool. I mean, that is quite amazing that that's possible. Again, in contrast to when I was younger, it would have taken so much time and effort and money to get this out. I mean, what would I do with a podcast? Post it, like purchase or acquire the rights to an AM radio station and just like hand out flyers all the time. Please listen to my AM radio station. Like, that's absurd. Like, it would be so challenging. Or you had to write a book, which, we need to be careful not losing that art. But for me, it's very hard working a full-time job to sit down and, write research papers or write an entire book. This is a very convenient medium and outlet to provide, in-depth, detailed information and express myself in a way that I wasn't able to when I was younger. But again, the flip side also still occurs, where my heart goes out to this younger generation who is just flooded with content, flooded with social comparison, and our brains are not ready for that. I don't think we have the literacy as a society to really comprehend the impacts on early development. I mean, there's more legislature and discussion about this nowadays. And, and this is broadly speaking just about identity, never mind creativity and creative output. I mean, it just feels like anywhere from a rat race to immense social pressure. Like, if I was pressuring myself at a local level, depressed as a young kid, without the internet, oh my gosh, what would I have done with the internet? Now, there is again, that counterpoint is maybe the internet would have helped me because I would have found more outlets, and that might have buffered me. But I know for a lot of folks, it is just, it could be torturous. The social comparison that happens can be absolutely torturous. And so we're in this, I think, dangerous phase when I'm refocusing in on creativity and creation, because while there's tons of accessibility, our metrics for our value, the value or worth of what we create is getting really distorted. Even me, who grew up in a time where, again, I was not exposed to the internet, I am pulled just as well. So I can only imagine if I'd been born, in this more recent generation. I can only imagine the challenges of like honoring my creation independent of likes or views or subscriptions or anything like that. So let me give an example and just apply it to this podcast. When I set out to do this, in my mind, I had no notion of high levels of popularity. And I think people from any generation can have this realistic appraisal of putting themselves out there. But I think, growing up when I did, I think I have a little bit more, I mean, possibly I have a healthier relationship with that kind of creative output of like, it's not about likes, it's about creating for creation's sake. However, and let me give you my metric. I was hoping like per episode, maybe if I get to 15 views ever, that's like pretty sweet. Now, ever is kind of a little bit of a stretch because the internet is so expansive. If you only get to 15 views after 5 years, that's a little bit strange unless it's so unique and nuanced. But 15 views in a few months or something like that. Like, okay, great. I mean, think about that. Like, to get to 15 people in life, to go back to the 80s and 90s and try to do that would have been exponentially difficult to reach 15 people that I would not have been able to reach otherwise. I mean, that is so cool. That is so amazing. And I really anchor in that. I mean, I got an episode on something I really like that has like 8 views right now. Okay. All right. I mean, cool. That's 8 people who listen to it. And more might come, but whatever. The fact that like possibly 8 people got something out of it, or at least I spurred on some sort of curiosity, is pretty sweet. However, I feel the pull. When I pull up my videos to watch it, the creation screen's very small, so you can view it on your page. It shows, this is talking about YouTube, not like the podcast mediums, but it shows recommended other videos, often with similar content. And what do they have? They have thousands upon thousands of subscribers. They have millions upon millions of views. And immediately this sort of primal relational brain goes, whoa, like you are way off from that. And then this sort of sinking feeling begins to happen where it's like, I'm not measuring up. This isn't good enough. It isn't well liked enough. And I can combat that and say it doesn't matter whether or not it's liked. It's again creation for creation's sake. But it's hard. You cannot turn that off. I was gonna say it's hard to turn off. You cannot fully turn that off. Otherwise, you're in your own little narcissistic fantasy, right? Like nothing matters. I do whatever the hell I want, no matter what people think about it or feel about it. Like dangerous opposite extreme. So I feel that pull of like, ooh, is this worth my time? And that question is being gauged more off of social comparison than off of my own wants and my own needs and realistic expectations. And so when I think about the increasing literacy that we need, it's a balance between these two forces. It's important to be seen, and it takes some bravery to put out content, and indeed it makes sense to hope that at least a few people behold what we are creating, whatever this sort of creative output might be. That's important for us. But holding these metrics of anything above like 5 or 10 people, to me, is dangerous. And that might seem like an incredibly low bar of like, well, surely you want to at least get to 1,000. No. Why would you want to do that? Who cares? Like, I know 10, people is vastly different than 5 million people, but the 5 million is rarer. It's, it's happenstance. And even then you don't even know how many people are actually listening or watching, is it just like a quick view or something like that? But I think that metric is really important to be like, look, I appreciate the accessibility that technology provides me and us, But I also need to be realistic and appreciate that if I get one comment or five likes or whatever it might be, that's pretty cool. Now let me give you a real life, still present day comparison to this and why that metric makes sense to me. And when in my line of work, especially when I'm doing therapy with people who feel lonely or depressed, do you know how many people they have in their lives that behold them and their creative abilities? Do you want to guess how many that typically is? I mean, I'm talking like 2, 3, maybe 4, get lucky 5. I mean, some people can have more, but they're usually acquaintances, people that wouldn't really understand or know they have these creative abilities, or they have these sort of talents and things outside of what they do for work, or who they are as human people, human beings. And so to get to 5 people who see something unique that you're doing and go, that's pretty cool, is astronomically high. It's astronomically high. The social world, independent of the internet, does not operate upon hundreds or thousands or millions. That's not how the human condition works. It is vastly smaller than that. To be able to touch and affect people at all is a feat. It is an absolute feat. And so 5 is massive. 10 is massive. 15, extraordinary. It's extraordinary. So, I think we need to kind of pull back because the discrepancy is massive. I mean, think about what I'm just saying right now. I mean, that discrepancy is massive. Ginormous. Something ridiculous. Use a ridiculous word. Just astronomically different. And we need to adjust our expectations that this is a wonderful medium for self-expression, and focus more on the self-expression. Do you enjoy it? Are you creating something? And indeed, hopefully a few people see it. If those few people see it and they like it and they appreciate it, then success. Good job. That's cool. That's very cool. You might not want to make a profession out of it. Don't, put all your, eggs in the basket and making money off it if you're only getting 10, 15 views. But remember, we're talking about creativity and creation independent of it being a job or income. This is creation for creation's sake. And we need to re-grasp this concept. We need to kind of really anchor in that it is always important to be seen. But at the end of the day, being seen by a few people and being able to express yourself and create something is absolutely imperative for the human condition. So anchor in that, especially if you're a fellow creator and you're like, not many people behold that. If you got a few people have seen what you can do, that's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So I will end with an extra gusto in what I'm about to say, and I very much appreciate you listening and watching, and very much appreciate any time you spend listening to this guy just kind of yap on about this, that, and the other. It is truly meaningful. And as always, stay curious.